We're about to begin a new chapter, chapter 8 in Tractate Eruvin. Several points of departure in this chapter. We're going to discuss the combination of courtyard that either attached or detached from each other. We're going to speak about shituf betchumin, partnership in eruvei tchumin, which is making the Iruv in the out of the Shabbat limits. We're going to speak about the situation that one person is responsible and take the leadership for everyone else, and everyone else is just partake of his contribution, and he is he is basically appointed by everyone else to lead the Eruv. The idea of Yedi'ah, which means the full knowledge of one person, if it is required or not, in what condition. We're going to speak about minor in conjunction to Eruv, and also we're going to speak in Mitzvah Shem in the Shi'ur Mazon Shte Seudot, since we talk about the measurement of Eruv, which has to be a food for 2 meals, what and when it apply, what type of Eruv, is that applied individually or collectively, and then how it's divided in order to make the Eruv valid. It's all in this first phase of the chapter 8, Tractate Eruvin, page 82a. Keitzad mishtatfin betchumin. The Mishnah asks how one person take the Eruv tchumin in order for everyone else to depend on his Eruv and dwell and take the Shvitat HaShabbat in that location, that they can walk from that location and onward. So meniach et achavit, he takes this barrel which is filled with the proper food, and you remember what we said many times, that it has to be certain food but excluding water and salt. Ve'omer, and he needs to make a clear declaration, Harei zeh lechol bnei iri, this particular barrel applied to the people, the inhabitants, the residents of my city, lechol mi sheyelech leveit ha'evel, anyone who needs to go tomorrow on Shabbat to the house of mourners, which needs, in that sense, the purpose of that dedication is for the sake of mitzvah, to comfort the mourners, or lebeit hamishte, in order to cheer up the bride and the groom, to do the simchat chatanim, simchat nesuim, to partake of celebration of bride and groom, sheva brachot, etc. V'chol shekibel alav mi be'od yom. So any person that partake of that in advance, meaning before the sunset of Shabbat, he said mutar, so he can go ahead and walk there when it's already Shabbat, mishetech shach, from the time that the sun set. However, if it's already late and it's sunset, asur, he cannot go there, because it's already Shabbat. She'en me'arvin mishetech shach. We're not allowed to, we are prohibited to make an Eruv when it's after the night fall. Amar Rav Yosef, en me'arvin ela ledvar mitzvah. Rav Yosef tells us that the only reason that we make that Eruv is for the purpose of mitzvah, such as nichum avelim, simchat chatanim, etc. My kamashmelan, what we want to derive from that, tenina, we learned in the Mishnah, lechol mi sheilech leveit ha'avel, or leveit ha'mishteh. Anyone who needs to go either in the, that's the cycle of life, either the house of mourners or the house of celebration. So we learn already that you should make the Eruv only for the purpose of mitzvah. So the Gemara said, Ma'u de telma, Orcha de milta ketane, which means that you also make the Eruv for other optional things. Kamash Melan, Rav Yosef wants to tell us that you should make Eruv solely for the purpose of mitzvah. So here, the Mishnah used purposely those examples in order, via negativa, to derive from that, to exclude any other purposes but those one. V'chol shekiber alav mib'od yom, as long as he accept upon himself, meaning all those participants in advance, before Shabbat, now we derive the point that we discussed many times, yesh brera or en brera. You remember we discussed it in the past? Many times. Yesh brera or en brera, the whole idea is, do we accept any type of commitment in advance, which is called retroactive clarification, which means if you take an assumption in advance that it's cover the future plans or not. In other words, when you make certain assumption, is that already retroactively accepted or not? Shamat mina ein brera, which means that the later event cannot justify the early one. The yesh brera. If you tell me that it is possible, tigale milta lemafredi me'ba'od yom avanichale. So now we know retroactively in this retroactive clarification that before Shabbat, before the time that we make this shvita, he agree upon dwelling there. So therefore he can go ahead and walk there. So why the Mishnah changed and said that it's only if someone accepts upon himself when it's dark, then he cannot depend on the Eruv. It's, if you tell me that it's yesh brera, so he can basically accept it after it's dark to do it retroactively. But Rav Ashi rejected. Amar Rav Ashi, you cannot derive from the Mishnah that it's no retroactive clarification and brera, because hodi'u velo hodi'u katanei. So it means you can say either because they tell him in advance that they're going to do it for the following day, but if they don't tell him in advance, so only when it's nightfall he cannot walk. So it means as long as they tell him in advance before Shabbat, when it's still light outside, so even he agree upon that later, it's already fine because they inform him in advance. So that means yesh brera, that it's retroactive qualification during the day, even he basically accepted that later. Amar Rav Asi, katan ben shesh, if you have a minor that it's already completed his 5th year of life, and now he starts his 6th year or less, yotze be'eruvimo, which means if his mom make independent eruv, so he can join her. She doesn't need to make a separate for him or an addition for him. He just followed her. Meitivei katan shetzarich limo yotze be'eruvimo v'shen tzarich limo yotze be'eruvimo. So how? So you say that a minor that it's needs his mother, so he is basically included by his mother. But if he's independent, no. Utnanami sukkah ke'aygavna. So we learn the same in a very similar in regard to sukkah. Katan shen tzarich limo. So Rashi here used the word klomar, and I explain it in my book Biurei Klomar Berashi al Hashas, that the reason they used this term, it's because to fill up this line, that how the Gemara in Sukkah connected to here. Just read it later in my book if you want to see what the Rashi meant here in Klomar. But anyway, they said here, Katan shen tzarich limo chayav besukkah. The Gemara said in Sukkah 28 that Katanas is independence, then is obligated the mitzvah of Sukkah. Giving the definition, one is a minor that is independent. As long as he needs to go to use the bathroom and his mother doesn't need to clean up after him. As long as he wake up, he didn't scream mommy mommy, it means he's independent. So they said, you mean to say this call upon his mother? You have also an adult that call and needs their mom. So again, Rashi here used the word klomar, and I explain it in a book at length. Is a long explanation why Rashi used the word klomar. Just welcome to read it in a book. The opposite way. As long as you wake up at night and he doesn't say mommy, mommy, so then it means that it's already independent. Vechama, give me a general definition of age. So it said kvar arba, kvar chamesh. It's there are those kids that they are matured, or there are those who are 5. 82b. So Rav Shua responds and he said, Amar Rav Yoshua b'rei Rav Idi, yes, even a minor in his 5th year, it's independent. But he says, Ki ke'amar Rav Asi, what Rav Asi said, kegon she'erav alav aviv latzafon v'imo ladarom. His dad made the Eruv from him in the north of the city, the mother did it for the south. So each of them put the food for the little boy shiko. So since he needs to take shvita in one place, so the question is which one you go, by mom or dad. So the afilu bar shesh name betzavta deimei nichalei, even the 6 years old, he is more comfortable with his mommy, right? So therefore, he is, even his independent, doesn't need his mom, but anyway he prefer to be together with mom. So the whole concept is that you put the at ha'adam, his agreement, his mindset, his knowledge upon setting up the Eruv. Meitive katan shetzarich limo yotze be'eruv imo. We just said that the minor need his mother. He is basically depend on her. So when she make the Eruv, it's included him. Ad ben shesh, until you reach the 6 years old of age. So now it's a contradiction. Tiyuvta de Rav Yoshua bar Idi. Tiyuvta. So now it's a refutation for the word Rav Yoshua ben Idi said, and they said Tiyuvta. When the Talmud repeats the word Tiyuvta twice, it means that it's total refutation. So they say, maybe we ask a question according to Rav Asi, because Rav Asi said that a minor in his 6 years, he still can go by his mother Eruv. Amar lecha Rav Asi ad ve'ad bechlal. So Rav Asi said, when you said that when the brother said up to the age of 6, it means up to it and included 6 years old. Up to 6 years old and included 6 years old. Another question, lema tehev de tuvta de Rabbi Yanai v'Rabbi Shlakish. So the same is in definition in regard to sukkah, 4, 5, etc. So it's a lokashya had the 80 avuhei b'mata, adelo 80 avuhei b'mata. So here his dad is around in that location, that city. The other one that is not there. He go out, etc. So he need to run after his mom. Tanu Rabbanan. Ma'arev adam al yedei bno u'bito aktanim. A person can make eruv tchumin by using his son, his daughter, that they are minor. Al yedei avdo v'shifchato. He can use his maid servant, male and female, hakna'anim, the Canaanites. Ben לדעתן, ben שלא לדעתם, regardless if they agree or not. אבל אינו מערב לא על ידי עבדו ושפחתו העברים. He cannot do that by using the Hebrew servant, ולא על ידי בנו וביתו הגדולים. He cannot use an adult children past the age of adulthood, ולא על ידי אשתו אלא מדעתם, and not by his wife, only if they totally agree, which means they have to have the full knowledge since they're considering by halacha an adult. Tanya idach lo ya'arev adam על ידי בנו ביתו הגדולים, ולא על ידי עבדו ושפחתו העברים, ולא על ידי אשתו אלא מדעתם. The same idea, they need to have a knowledge since they're considering an adult. אבל מערב על ידי עבדו ושפחתו הכנענין, ועל ידי בנו וביתו הקטנים, בן אדם שלו מלאתם נשי אדם כידו. Since they are basically part of himself, in our definition is part of his acquirement, these minors, these servants, therefore they are part of his quote-unquote domain, property, and he can do it without their consent. וכולן שערבו וערב עליהן רבן יוצאים בשביל רבן. Anyone who make the Eruv independently and their teacher did it in different location, the Eruv that the Rabbi did for them, it's accepted for them. חוץ מן האישה מפני שיכולה למחות. Excluding the wife, that she can resent it, she can reject the Eruv that the husband made, and it will be accepted. So they said, Isha ma'ishna. What's the difference between her and others? Amar Rabba, Isha v'chol dedam ela. Rabba said the reference is not only to the wife. The Tana is also speaking the wife as all who are similar to her in this regard, such as a Hebrew servant or an adult son, etc. Marmar, chutz min ha'isha mnei shechola limchot. Excluding the wife because she can become an rejection. She can reject it. So now what we are saying, Tama de mache. So the only reason that she can do it independently is because she can reject it. Has Tama nafka le'ba'ala. But in usual manner, she can exclude it in her husband's eruv. Hakatan rashela midatan. So by early close, we say that they has to have their knowledge. My love, the amrei ein. It means that they agree. They said yes. Said the Gemara response said no, my ela midatam di ishtiku. They mean that their knowledge that they quiet, which means that in our language they display equanimity. They are basically acquiesce. So by their act of acquiescence, we accepted that as agreement. Lapuke chade amrilo, excluding situation that say clearly and unequivocally no. וכולם שירבו וירב עליהם רבן, יוצאים בשל רבן. We just said that if the master did for others, it's already included. וסתמה and that's general statement. ובקטן חוץ מן האישה דלא נפקי. Now we said that including the wife. אמר רבה, כיוון שירבו, אין לך מה גדול מזה. Since they make it independent עירוב, that's basically an act they express their independence. So they heard that the Rebbe did, but anyway they did it independently, which means that basically their action proved that they do not wish to be part of their master's Eruv. Now the Mishnah dealing with Shabbat boundaries. כמה הוא שיעורו של מזון שתי סעודות לכל אחד ואחד? What is the measure for when you have adjoining boundaries? They said the quantity of two meal for each and every one of those included in the Eruv. So basically you can use any type of food, we said many times, excluding water and salt. Everything else you can use for Eruv. But the big question is, what exactly it means 2 meals. Some say that it applies specifically to 2 regular meals, including bread. Part of the bread has to be incorporated with the meal. Others say that if you can use liftan, you can use meat, and you can use onion and other things, you can use it as well. So divrei רבים מזונו לכל ולא לשבת divrei רבי מאיר. Reb Meir said that specifically applied to weekday 2 meals, but not for Shabbat, because soon you see the whole idea of Shabbat meal carries a different meaning. Rabbi Yehuda Omer, the opposite. Rabbi Yehuda said לשבת ולא לכל. That's applied to 2 meals of Shabbat and not for the weekday. וזה וזה מתכוונים להקל. And both of them meant leniency, which means each of them has the meaning that it's leniency, because one said that the food for Shabbat it's much delicious, and Shabbat you have basically 3 meals. So therefore, one said that during the week a person eat more than the Shabbat. Others said that quite the contrary, Shabbat you eat more. So you look either way, you go lenient, because the big question is what meal it's less, if the weekday or Shabbat. Rabbi Yochanan ben Broka Omer mikikar, so the limit boundaries has to be by bread, and he said befundiyon me'arba se'in besela. If you use a certain coin, it's called pundiyon, it has to be in a 4 se'in in a sela. Sela is the name of those ancient coin. Rabbi Shimon Omer shte yadot lakikar mishalosh lakav. So Rabbi Shimon said that 2/3 of 1/3 is 2/3 of 9, and according to Rabbi Shimon, it's 2 meal, that the boundary measure of food. That Rashi explained that it's a 2 pieces of 9 of kav, which is basically 1 meal. So you basically multiple that by twice, and that's the mazon shtei sudot, the meal for the meal for 2 meals. Since we talk about measurement of Eruv Tchumin, so now, by the way, it's not Rabbi Shimon part, but it's a by the way statement of a basis of other halachot. So he said, Chetzia labait hamenuga. Now we talk about a loaf of bread, so we talk about a loaf that the amount is called half pras, that halachot of the leper's house. So Rashi here used the word klomar, and again I elaborate here in my book Bibra Klomar Barashi al Hashas. So in basic idea, it's applied to when you have a house that one of the walls have a tzarat, have a leprosy. So they bring the Kohen to see it. So the Kohen see the house and then he determined what's going on. So he said, half of this loaf is the amount of bread that stay in that house in order for him to launder his garment. V'chatzit chetzia lifsol et hagviya, which means that half of its half, a quarter of this loaf, is the amount of ritually impure food that disqualified the body, which means that impure food of this amount impart ritual impurity to the body of the eater and disqualified him by rabbinic law from eating truma. So the Gemara asks, "V'chama mazon shte sudot?" What is exactly the meaning of 2 meals, food of 2 meals? Amar Rav Yehuda Amar Rav tartei rifreta ikaryata. So it's like the farmer that they have 2 loaves of bread of those farmers. That's the Rashi said that they lead those oxes in the field. Rav Ada bar Ahava Amar tartei rifta nehar papaita. That's applied to two standard loaf of bread baked in the region of this Papa river. Amar le Rav Yosef bre de Rava. So now the conclusion. Avuch, meaning Rava, your father, keman svirale, to whom he hold, ke Rabbi Meir svirale, he hold the same as Rabbi Meir. So Rabbi Yosef said, Ana namek Rabbi Meir svirale, I also hold that way. Di Rabbi Yehuda kasha alem rein she Rav Chalev v'sima shechiach. Because otherwise it's a problem from what the popular is saying. There is always room for sweet. What does that mean, room for sweet? So Rashi here explained in Klomar that it's almost like allegorical explanations that I brought here also the Gaon Yaakov in Yerushalmi, that when you're using this term, it means even a person, his stomach is full, but let's face it, if you bring something very sweet that he likes it a lot, so all of a sudden there is a room in his belly for that food.
There's always room for dessert.
A room for dessert. So it means that Rabbi Meir hold that people eat more in a Shabbat meal than usual. Then the Mishnah said, Rabbi Yochanan ben Broka Omer, he said that Mikikar Pim Denyon, which means that 1 measure is amount of food for 2 meals. Rabbi Shimon established a different amount. So the Tana, ukrovin divrehen liot shavin, that their word it's almost been identical. Midami, how come? It's really for real that they descend. Rabbi Yochanan 4 sudat alekaba, Rabbi Shimon 9 sudat alekaba. Rabbi Yochanan has there are 4 meals for a carb, and Rabbi Shimon hold 9 meals for a carb. So Marvchiz that semeim shlish lechenvani. You deduct 1/3 for the grosser markup, which means that they take 1/3 as a profit. So this add 1/2 to the total cost, which means those people they basically also make some living for selling it. So he said, "Ve'akati lemar tisha o lemar shit." So now you say that according to Rabbi Shimon is 9 meals for kav, and Rabbi Yochanan ben Broka is only 6. So how you say that is a differentiate between that is no difference between them and they are close, almost identical, while you see here difference. One is 9, one is 6. So ela keidach the Rav Chizda, you have to go by the Rav Chizda. The amar tzemehem mechza lachen vani. You should go the lost of part of Rabbi Yochanan ben Broka opinion for the reward, meaning the income for the grocer owner. That's the measure of the dough, that it's in the coin of Chatzi Pondion. the Gemara still challenges ve'akate lemar teisha or lemar tamni. So still you see one hold, Rabbi Shimon hold that is 9, and Rabbi Yochanan ben Broga hold 8. Hainu kama udvarim levem good. Now you understand that they are close between 8 to 9. They are close to each other. Kasha de Rav Chizda. So now you see a contradiction between one statement of Rav Chizda and another statement of Rav Chizda concerning the size of the grosser profit. Because one is said that he is 1/3 and one said he is a half. So it's a lokashia ha dekayayiv balabayit tzivei ha delo yayiv balabayit tzivei. So it said one is a homeowner provide the wood for baking bread. The other one, the homeowner does not provide the food, the wood. So the grocer is entitled to reimbursement for the cost of the wood, in addition to the work of baking, and consequently he marks up the price by 1/2. First halacha is a tour in Shulchan Aruch Orach Chaim 4:15, which also citing the Ramban. Eiruv ledvar mitzvah. One may establish a joining of Shabbat boundaries only for the purpose of mitzvah, such as to celebrate a wedding, to go to a mourner's house, to greet one's master or students, or to run from danger places. Nonetheless, if one establishes an Eruv for an everyday purpose, they say that the Eruv is valid, but again, lechatchila, it shouldn't be like that. If one is informed about an Eruv off Shabbat limits while it's still day, the Eruv is valid even if he accepted it only after the nightfall, which means yesh brera. If he was not informed about the existence of the Eruv prior to the onset of Shabbat, he may not rely on it even if it's so desired. Shulchan Aruch Orach Chaim 4:13. A child up to and including the age of 6 may use his mother Eruv without contributing 2 meals toward the Eruv. The halacha is according to the opinion of Rav Ashi, and that's the Rif, the Rambam, and several mitzvot katan. However, the Shulchan Aruch Orach Chaim in 4:15 said that a 5-year-old child who does not need his mother may not rely on her Eruv as well. We talk also about the Sukkah, and that's the Vilna Gaon. He said that we basically obligate parents to educate the young children in the observance of mitzvot. This duty pertains to minors from the age of 5 or 6. So as we said, the Vilna Gaon hold that the obligation begins with the child is 6 years old, and that's basically the way that Rav Ashi in its Shulchan Aruch Orach Chaim 640 said it as well. We ask about the knowledge of a person. So we said that Eruv cannot be established for an adult, including one's wife, adult child, Jewish servant, and maidservant, without that person's knowledge. If they raise an objection or establish an Eruv in different direction, they may not use his Eruv. However, if they remain silent, which means they basically acquiesce, it is as though they gave their consent. One may establish an Eruv for his minor children without their knowledge, to educate them for mitzvot, that's the Magen Avraham. And Shulchan Aruch Orach Chaim 4:14 said that one may also establish an Eruv for his non-Jewish servant or maidservant, and his Eruv includes them even if they raise objections, since in that sense they part of his ownership, the ownership. The last one, last halacha, we talk about Shi'ur Eruvei Tchumin. Shulchan Aruch Orach Chaim 409. An Eruv of Shabbat boundaries must consist of food sufficient for 2 meals for each person, included in the Eruv. The measure for 2 meals, the Rambam said, is an amount of bread equal in volume of 6 egg bark. Also the Vilna Gaon hold that. The Rema hold that this rule, that the amount of must be equal to the volume of at least 8 egg bark. This measure applied to both an average person and a gluttonous one. However, an elderly or sick person require for sure less food. Hashem.